That's what I'm asking you, okay? And let's take the most populous places, India and China. Now, is it your judgment that the majority of marriages in those two places prior to the last 100 years have been limited to just two people as opposed to polygamous marriages? Do you understand my question?
Completely. And I'm struggling to help you understand my answer, which is my answer to your question is yes. I think I could just save us some time if I would be allowed to say another sentence or two.
Go ahead. Just try to keep it brief.
I will. I promise you. Even in instances of a man engaging in polygamous marriage, each marriage is separate. One man marries one woman. That's the way it works. The scholars, then, have pointed out that in certain societies, many societies, men of wealth and power then go on to marry additional women. And they do not marry as a group. It is not a group marriage. It permits certain men that have access to power to marry more than one woman. Each marriage is a separate marriage of one man and one woman.
All right, let me be sure I understand what you're saying. First, just as a background question, you are aware of instances in which a man has actually married multiple women at the same time?
Well, that would be the term that would be used is polyamory. A group. Now, to the best of my knowledge, that is. I know it is virtually non-present in human experience, and to the best of my knowledge, I could be mistaken on this because history is long and there have been many people who have lived on this earth, but I do not think there are examples of group marriages in the human experience.
And by group marriages, I just want to be clear. I'm saying where a man marries multiple women at the same time. You are not aware of any instances like that.
At the same moment, they all stand together, one man and a bunch of women, and they say, "You are all married now?"
Two or more women.
Oh, I am. Well, since you're asking me, perhaps you found an example. I'm certainly not aware of one.
Okay, now let me turn to what you are aware of, and that is where a man marries more than one woman at different points in time, so-called polygamy. Or some situations you are also aware that of where a woman might marry more than one man, correct?
Well, that is, what that is called.
I'm not asking you what that's called.
Polyandry. Polyandry. There's an important clarification here because in almost all human examples of polyandry, it's the woman who marries sequentially two brothers, two people who are brothers to one another. And there are cases where, because the sex ratio is so skewed, that as a survival adaptation for those very rare subgroups, it is permitted for a woman to marry two males who are brothers to one another sequentially.
Is it your testimony that the only instances that you are aware of women marrying more than one man sequentially, so that after marrying the second one, she was married to two people?
Two brothers.
Is where there were brothers? That's your testimony?
It's my testimony.
I'm just asking you whether that's your testimony.
I'm trying to answer your question. This is a subject
This is a yes or no question.
If you're going to, we're back to where we were yesterday. If you're going to make me choose between those two words, then I'm just going to say...
Between what two words?
It's not a yes or no question. I'm answering, in the time we are arguing about this, I could have given you my answer. My answer is...
What question are you answering?
The best scholarship...
Now, wait a minute. What question are you answering right now?
Well, it seemed to me that you said, is it your testimony that there are no examples of polyandrous marriages other than the woman marrying the two brothers? And I was seeking to answer that question succinctly.
No, that is actually the question I was asking you.
Yes, sir.
Now, can you answer that question, yes or no? And if you can't, I'm going to move on because it's not that important.
Okay. Well, then let's move on because, it does not permit a yes or no answer.
But I want to know whether you are prepared to answer yes or no.
I would give a lot if I could have 15 seconds to answer the question.
Go.
The best scholarship available shows that almost all examples of polyandrous marriages involve a woman marrying the two brothers. There are very rare exceptions to that have been documented by the ethnographic literature. In addition, Polyandry as a human phenomenon is extraordinarily rare in the human record. How'd I do?
That was good.
That was okay?
That was okay.
Good.
Now, and the record, and the reason I didn't want to spend much time on this is because I agree, that's unusual. Polygamy, however, as you say, was present in 83% of societies. And in those cases...
No, very minority. You see, as a minority family form.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you about that. I might as well do that right now. All right? What percentage of marriages prior to the last 100 years were polygamous? That is, what percentage of the people what percentage of people were in polygamous marriages as opposed to marriages between just two people?
I'm a little embarrassed to tell you I don't know.
Approximately.
Well, I honestly don't know. I know that I'll stop there. I don't know.
Okay. Now, I want to pursue whether polygamous marriages are consistent with your so-called rule of two, as I understand it.
We're now down to so-called.
Well, your rule of two. It just seems to me that, well, never mind. I'll put it in a form of question. If you have a man who has 5 wives at the same time.
He doesn't marry them at the same time.
But he has them at the same time.
After he married the 5th, he has 5.
Right.
And after he's married 1, he has 1.
And he's married 2. After he's married
2.
That's
That's
it.
That's how it works.
That's how it works, yes. Okay. And after he married his 5th wife, assuming they all continue to live and there has been no divorce, he has 5 wives, correct?
Right. Yes, sir.
Now, is it your testimony that the man with 5 wives is consistent, that marriage is consistent with what you say is your rule of 2? That is correct? Now, that's a yes or a no question.
Based on the findings of the anthropologists who've actually studied this, yes. The answer to your question is yes.
And when you say based on the scholars that have studied this, that's because you're simply repeating the things that these scholars say.
Yes.
You're just a transmitter of the findings of these scholars, correct?
Well, you're putting words in my mouth now.
No, sir.
Yes, sir.
Well, we'll look at your words in your deposition, all right? Page 300, do you have that up there?
I don't believe I do.
Well, it's in your first book, the first book that Mr. Cooper gave.
I beg your pardon?
It's in the plaintiff's binder.
I might be able to save us time by saying that the substance of your comment is correct. I was simply trying to report the view of some scholars. It's the transmitter thing. I was just trying to suggest that I was basing my arguments on scholarship. I'm not even saying there aren't scholars that have a different point of view. I'm saying there are scholars, respected scholars, who have made this argument based on ethnographic research, and I've read them, and that's the basis for my assertion. That's all.
I understand. Now, I'm really just addressing whether I was putting words in your mouth. And if you look at page 300, lines 7 through 12, and you can read any other portion of this you want, but you have said that you are basing your analysis on the work of highly related scholars. And then you say, for instance...
No, I got your moment. Say, I used the word, I'm a transmitter of findings of eminent scholars. Huh? Gotcha.
No,
yeah?
This is not a gotcha. I'm just trying to say...
No, I said transmitters 7 months ago in a deposition.
Right, and what you meant there was that what you were doing was you weren't making any of these conclusions yourself on your own. You were simply repeating what these scholars have said. Is that correct?
If I may say it in my own words,
well,
I was basing...
well, let me look at your own words on page 300, okay? At lines 7 to 12.
That sounds real.
I'm simply repeating things that they say. I can assure you I'm not making any of this up on my own. These are not my own conclusions. I'm a transmitter here of findings of these eminent scholars. Did you give that testimony at your deposition?
That's what I said at the deposition.
Okay, now I want to be sure I've got an answer to my question. And if you did answer it, I apologize, sir. But is it your judgment that a man who is married at the same time, That is, he has multiple wives along the way. Sequentially. And he's now married to 5 women.
Each with a separate ceremony and a separate I do.
Yes. Is it your view that that man who has married one wife, then another wife, then another wife, then another wife, and then another wife, and he now has 5 wives, and they're all his 5 wives at the same time, that marriage is consistent with your rule of 2? And that's a yes or a no question.
Well, I concur with Branislaw Malinowski and others who say that that is consistent with the 2 rule of marriage.
Okay. Now, let me go on to your 3rd essential structure of the institution of marriage, and that is sex.
That's a good subject.
It is, and I don't want to fall into the trap of making sex boring.
Well, maybe together we can do that. There's no insinuation. No.
Well, my question was going to be, and is now, whether you are aware of instances in which marriages are inconsistent with your rule of sex.
I'm sorry. You were saying the couple is married and they do not have sexual intercourse. Am I aware of such marriages?
Well, that wasn't actually my question, but why don't you give an answer to that question? That's really easy, right? The answer to that is yes, correct?
Well, I was going to answer no, but maybe I'm misunderstanding the nature of your question.
All right, and
No, the presumption of sex is one of the foundational elements of marriage. And failure to consummate the marriage through sexual intercourse in the overwhelming majority of societies, in both law and custom, it's grounds for divorce.
Well, let me just...
No. That's why we have terms like marriage bed, culminating the marriage. That's what happens. The couple gets married, and then they have sexual intercourse.
So it's your testimony that you are not aware of any married couples who don't have sex?
Well, here we go. We're going to make it boring again. There are some married couples in the world today who have never had sexual intercourse. Oh my gosh. Well, I suppose, just thinking hypothetically, I'm trying to think.
Well, if you're not aware of them, I'm not asking you to hypothesize.
Well, there could be there could be an example, say, of an incarcerated man who marries while he's in incarceration. Huh? It could be true that the system he's in is one of the majority of systems that does not allow for conjugal visits, and he will not be able to consummate the sexual relationship with his wife till he's released from prison. And during the time that he is in prison and married and unable to have a conjugal visit, I guess it's possible or likely that man will not have had sexual intercourse with his wife by virtue of incarceration. And he will have to wait until after he is released, or he will have to wait until the period of a conjugal visit. That would be an example. Or you might have examples of a husband and wife who simply don't like sex. They don't want to have sex. It's not of interest to them, or they don't hold it as a valuable component of anything in life, and so they may wish to get married for other reasons, having nothing to do with sex, and so they just might be one of those couples. I've never met one. I'm not aware of it being at all a pattern in humans. In fact, I believe the pattern is essentially in the opposite direction. But hypothetically, could there be such a case? I suppose there could.
Well, sir, you know perfectly well that these are not just sort of hypothetical cases, correct, sir?
No, sir.
You don't?
No.
You don't? Like the example of the incarcerated prisoner. You know perfectly well that's a real example from a real court case, don't you, sir?
No, sir, I do not.
You don't?
Well, why would you try to put words in my mouth of that nature?
Well, because it is my understanding that you have previously recognized that this very specific example of where the United States Supreme Court held that you could not deprive somebody of the right to marry merely because they were incarcerated and could not have sex. And I thought that you had talked about that. And if you tell me that's not true, then and I can't find
Well, no, to the best of my ability. Yeah? I mean, to the best of my recollection, I'm telling you that is not so.
So you are not aware of that case at all?
No, sir. No.
Okay.
Now, I'm not saying that in the course of a lifetime somebody has never said anything to me about it. I just have no recollection of it.
Okay, so now I don't want you to hypothesize. Other hypothetical examples.
You see, now I've talked about issues of, I have thought about, and in conversation with others, talked about the issue of prisoners who marry. I've talked about that, but I'm not aware, I'm not a student of, see, I don't know what year that court case, I'm not even aware of
Okay.
with this thing, that you're talking
All
about.
right. Let me approach it this way.
Uh-huh.
I'm not asking you to hypothesize. I'm just asking you whether you are aware of any examples of marriage that are inconsistent with your rule of sex. If you are not aware of them, I don't want you to hypothesize or try to think up what might exist. Just are you aware of any examples or not?
No, sir.
Okay. Now
No. May I clarify? You're asking me, am I aware of an individual marriage case, an individual married couple that has not consummated their marriage through sexual intercourse? Is that your question?
No. My question was whether you were aware of any examples of marriage that were inconsistent with your rule of sex.
Rule of sex.
Now,
No, I was just asking if you were asking me of an individual couple, did I know of an individual couple who had not consummated their marriage through sexual intercourse?
let me approach it this way, okay?
I'm not aware of such a couple.
Let me approach it this way, because this has gone on long enough where I found the deposition that I thought existed, okay? Let's see. Would you please turn to page 258 of your deposition and beginning at line 13?
Go.
Okay. But in any society, if a man and a woman wants to marry and not have sex at all, and neither one seeks divorce, they're free to do that, right? Answer. Well, the law on that has changed in recent decades. And now in recent years, there has been a growing permission on the part of courts to accept married couples who cannot have sexual intercourse. For example, when one spouse is in prison. Do you see that, sir?
That's exactly what I told you.
Well, that doesn't say it's hypothetical, does it, sir? You're not talking about hypothetical.
I did not use, I don't think I used the word hypothetical in my answer. I said in cases where a prisoner is unable to consummate his marriage, he would have to depend upon getting out of prison to do so, or conjugal visits. I think that's what I said. And you said, oh no, there's a specific court case. And I said, I'm not aware of a specific court case, which I'm not. I do know that the courts allow, I believe, as a matter of being a generally informed person, that courts allow, many courts, I don't know, every court, I don't know, many courts allow prisoners to marry, and it's a topic of interest to me as a person interested in marriage, and I have the level of knowledge as adumbrated in this definition, which is not a deep one, but I know that prisoners are allowed to marry, and I know that in order to consummate the marriage, they'd have to wait until they get out of prison, or if they're in a system that allows conjugal visits, and that's all I know. I mean, I'm not aware of specific court cases that have or haven't done this. I know it's been a tendency on the part of the courts, or at least some courts, to allow prisoners to marry, but it's not my area of expertise. I just, that's my level of knowledge.
But it is clear, is it not, that the growing permission on the part of the courts to accept married couples who cannot have sexual intercourse, for example, when one spouse is in prison, is something that does exist today. It is not a hypothetical situation, correct, sir?
I don't think I ever said it is hypothetical.
Well, I'm not asking you whether you ever said it was or not. I think the record shows whatever it shows. All I'm asking you is...
If you're asking me if there are prisoners who can marry, the answer to my best knowledge is yes.
even when they cannot have sexual intercourse, correct?
Until they get out of prison.
Well, if they are in prison for life, they can never get out of prison, right,
Well,
sir?
if they're in for life and they're in prison for life and then they're in a system that does not allow any conjugal visits, I would have to consult experts to find out if there is a human being in the country who is in such a situation. He's in prison for life, he's married, and he's not in a system in which any conjugal visitation is allowed. And if there, I don't know if there is such a person, but if there were, then it would be true that that person would be a married person who cannot consummate his marriage through sexual intercourse. Yeah, that's the answer to your question.
And at your deposition on November 3rd, 2009, you say, the law on this has changed in recent decades, and now in recent years, there has been a growing permission on the part of the courts to accept married couples who cannot have sexual intercourse. For example, when one spouse is in prison. Correct? That's what you said on November 3rd, 2009, correct? Is that what
Yes. I'm not looking at the transcript now, but yes, that's what I said.
And is it your testimony that you have never looked at any court cases that addressed whether or not prisoners can marry, correct?
The very best of my recollection and memory, I have never consulted, by reading anything, a court document that is related to the topic that we are discussing. I'm not saying I never have. I've been reading things for a long time, but to the best of my knowledge, I've never read a court document that is specifically focused on this topic. And if I ever have, then I have forgotten it. But I don't realistically, I don't think I have. I've had many conversations with people who are lawyers about the, I don't know what level this thing gets decided, but I know that there's a tendency to allow more freedom. I believe that there is a tendency to allow prisoners more freedom than was heretofore the case to marry. And that's about as far as I was trying to go in my deposition statement.
Now, and what I'm focusing now on, sir, is in your study of marriage, have you come across cases from the United States Supreme Court that talk about marriage as a fundamental right of all people? Have you come across any cases that discuss that? Now, that's a yes or a no question.
By come across, do you mean have I read something that the courts have written?
All right, let's start with that. Have you read any Supreme Court opinions that discuss marriage as a fundamental right? Just yes or no?
Well,
Or I don't remember.
to the best of my knowledge, the answer is no.
Okay. Now, has any person summarized for you the holdings of the United States Supreme Court in cases that discuss the fundamental right to marry?
I believe the answer to that is yes, because if someone, you or someone, were to ask me, is it my understanding that the Supreme Court has stated at some point in time, at any point in time, has used the term fundamental right to marry and has articulated a fundamental right to marry, my answer would be that I believe that the Supreme Court has stated such a right. And it would be I would not be surprised to learn that that were true. I would be happy to learn that it is true, but I'm not basing it on sure knowledge of having read it, having read it in any document.
Now, I'm not asking you whether you'd be surprised by it. I'm just trying to ask you whether you are aware of it and whether you have considered it in your work. That's all I was trying to get at. And having talked about this so far, does it refresh your recollection that somebody has talked to you about the United States Supreme Court holding that prisoners have a fundamental right to marry, even if they were not able to have sex? Does that refresh your recollection that you have either been told that or read that?
No, sir.
Okay.
No, to the best of my knowledge, I have never been told that or ever read that.
Okay.
To the best of my recollection.
Okay. Well, let's turn to another subject. And let me ask you to look at tab 8. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, can we resume 5 minutes of the hour?
Yes, Your Honor.
Right. Mr. Boies, you may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. Would you turn to tab 8 in the binder that we gave you this morning?
Yes.
Now, this is Plaintiff's Exhibit 2879, and it's titled The Marriage Movement, A Statement of Principles. And you're familiar with this, are you not, sir?
Yes, sir.
And this was put out by the Institute for American Values, is that correct, sir?
It was put out by 3 organizations, one of which was the Institute for American Values.
And did you review this before it was put out?
Yes, sir.
And did you agree with it?
Well, if it had been my own writing, I would have Well, the words would not have been the same. But I supported the overall thrust of the document and felt that it was a valuable contribution to the public discussion.
And one of the things that the document talks about is how marriage is in crisis. Is that correct?
Well, I don't recall if it used the words crisis, but it wouldn't surprise me to find that it did.
Well, if you turn to page 5. Your Honor, I would offer Plaintiff's Exhibit 2879.
No objection, Your Honor.
Very well, 2879 is admitted.
Yes, okay. It does use the word crisis.
And it discusses why marriage has weakened, correct, sir?
Yes, sir. I mean, I'm assuming it does. I believe it, my recollection is that it does.
Yes, and your recollection is correct.
Yeah.
And the reasons that are given why marriage is weakened has nothing to do with homosexuality or same-sex marriage, correct?
The reasons given in this document?
Yes.
From the year 2000?
Yes.
Oh, well, to the best of my recollection, we did not include anything about homosexuality or the then not very significant, no, not very, very nascent gay marriage legal cases. I'm not confident of this, but to the best of my knowledge, this document does not make any extensive or perhaps even no references to these topics.
Okay.
Okay, that's based on my memory.
Okay. Now let me ask you to turn to page 8. And there's a heading that says, "What is marriage? 6 dimensions." And it says, marriage has at least 6 important dimensions. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
And do you agree with that?
Marriage has at least 6 important dimensions?
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. I think I would have to take a moment to review what this group of scholars wrote. I was a signatory of this document, and so I read it and thought it was a valuable and positive contribution. But if you want me to, I'm not quite sure if you want me to, on a word-by-word basis, say I agree with every single sentence in the following few paragraphs. I'm afraid you're going to have to give me a moment to read them and refresh my memory of what the actual wording of each one of them is.
Well, my present question, if you have to read it, read it. But
Okay.
my present question was simply whether you, as a signatory to this document, agree that marriage has at least 6 important dimensions.
Well, what I will say is that I agree that this is, for the purposes of this document, for what this document was trying to do, I believe that this is a useful way of describing marriage's dimensions. Yeah.
All right. And the first of these 6 important dimensions is that marriage is a legal contract. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
And taking the current subject of gay and heterosexual marriage, whether you have a heterosexual couple or a gay or lesbian couple, the dimension of marriage as a legal contract would be the same, correct?
Yes, sir.
And the second dimension...
No, you're saying that gay, you're saying that same-sex marriage would be a legal contract, like opposite-sex marriage.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, and the second important dimension that's listed here is marriage is a financial partnership. Do you see that?
Yeah, that would be the same as well.
All right. And that would be the same for heterosexual couples and homosexual couples, correct?
Yes, sir.
And the next important dimension of marriage that's listed here is marriage is a sacred promise. And that, again, would be the same for gay and lesbian couples as it would be for heterosexual couples, correct?
As would be the same in sexual union and personal bond.
Which are the next 2.
Yes, sir.
All right. Marriage is a sexual
Sexual
union,
union.
which was the 4th important dimension, and marriage is a personal bond, which is the 5th important dimension, correct?
Yes, sir.
And the 6th important dimension is marriage is a family-making bond, correct?
Yes, sir.
And obviously, a heterosexual marriage can, and by family-making bond, let me just ask, does this mean it's a family-making bond even when there are only 2 people? Or does it mean that this is a way of establishing children?
Well, I'm afraid, I'm sorry. Could you repeat the question?
Sure. Well, let me break it up this way. The 6th important dimension is marriage is a family-making bond. Now, when 2 people are married, they become a family, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that is true for gay and lesbian couples on the one hand, And
Opposite.
yeah, heterosexual couples on the other, right?
Yes, sir.
And both gay and lesbian couples on the one hand and opposite sex couples on the other hand can raise children within the family bond, correct?
Can both opposite sex couples and same sex couples raise children? Yes, sir.
Okay. And in that connection, let me ask you.
The important word there is the verb is raise.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And in that connection, let me ask you to turn to tab 9. And this is Plaintiff's Exhibit 2898. This is an article that the Social Science Quarterly by Laura Langbine and Mark Yost entitled Same-Sex Marriage and Negative Externalities. Do you see that?
Yeah, no. I'm looking at this article for the first time, I believe. Yes, yes.
So you have not seen this article before?
To the best of my knowledge, I have not.
Do you know any of these two authors?
No, sir.
So you're not familiar with any of these two authors or their work?
Well, now, I can't say that I've never read anything by them, but sitting here right now, they're not, these names, they're not familiar to me.
All right, Your Honor, we would ask you to take judicial notice of Plaintiff's Exhibit 2898.
Very well.
Your Honor, we have no objection to the request made by Mr. Boies. I would note, this is a document we haven't seen until, I think this morning, but we have no objection to you taking judicial notice of it.
Fine.
Okay, now on the first page, there is a summary and there are headings. The headings are objectives, methods, results, and conclusions. Do you see those headings?
Yes, sir.
Now, after conclusions, the article states as the conclusions, the argument that same-sex marriage poses a negative externally on society cannot be rationally held. Although many might believe that this is a conclusion that is so obvious that it does not warrant testing, many politicians use this argument as a fact-based rationale to legitimize bans on same-sex marriage. Now, you have said that you don't recall having seen this article before, but are you aware of scholars who have asserted in peer-reviewed articles that the argument that same-sex marriage poses a negative externality on society cannot be rationally held?
Yes, and I'm also aware of many arguing that it's so obvious that it need not be tested.
Yeah, so you are aware.
In other words, it's a self-evident beginning proposition for them. They think that it's so self-evident that anybody who has an opposing point of view is not a rational person.
And
many articles say this.
many articles say this?
Yes, sir.
All right. Incidentally, you talked about how the issues that you are addressing are issues that are addressed by sociologists, anthropologists, and psychologists, and other scholars. Now, have you looked at what associations of those scholars have said about same-sex marriage?
Yes, sir. A number of them have looked at it. Yes, sir. I don't know that I've necessarily looked at every one, but I've certainly seen a number of them.
All right. Do you know, for example, now I'm going to hand out another binder.
Thank you.
Do you know, for example, what the position the American Psychoanalytic Association takes with respect to same-sex marriage?
My recollection is that their corporate kind of lobbying body has endorsed it.
Now, when you say their lobbying body,
Or they're the leaders, the leaders of their association. Let's put it that way. The people that speak for them as a professional scholarly association. They're leaders.
all right, let me ask you to look at tab 3 of this new binder that I just handed you, where you have a publication of the American Psychoanalytic Association. Do you see that?
Hold on 1 second. Tab 3. Oh, no, you see, I think my, hold on a second. I think my tab 3 says, lesbian mothers, gay fathers, and their children, a review.
No, we must have a different, you should have Plaintiff's Exhibit 760 there.
Well, am I in the right book? Am I in the wrong book?
No,
it's
the
a different book.
It's the binder you were just given, the small binder you were just given.
Well, small, I don't know, 3.
Tab 3.
Oh, here it is. Yeah, he is.
The American Psychoanalytic Association publication. Huh? Plaintiff's Exhibit 760.
A position paper.
Yes. And it says that the American Psychoanalytic Association in 1977 endorsed the following marriage resolution. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
And it states, because marriage is a human right and an individual personal choice, resolved that the state should not interfere with same-gender couples who choose to marry and share fully and equally in the rights, responsibilities, and commitment of civil marriage. Were you aware of that in 1997? The American Psychoanalytical Association had adopted that resolution?
Yes, sir. I believe I have. I believe I have read this one or read excerpts from this position statement. As I mentioned, there are many such statements, and I might be able to save us time by saying I perfectly understand that many scholarly associations, the leadership groups, as a policy matter, have endorsed same-sex marriage.
Now, you say as a policy matter. Let me ask you to look at page 4 of this exhibit, where a number of references are listed. Now, are you aware of these references? Have you read these materials?
Well, I've read a number of them,
All right.
so let me see if I've read every single one. No, sir, I haven't read all of them.
Well, why don't you just identify the ones you have not read?
Not read. Branford, Chan, D. Placido, Faulkner, Green, I don't know, Greenan, King, Herrick. See, I've read Gilbert Hurt, but I can't recall if I've read this article or not by Gilbert Hurt and his colleague Kurtzer. House, I don't believe I've read. And I'm going to say Kurtzner. Geikolt, Glazer, I think I have read. And I'm pretty sure I've actually cited it somewhere, but I can't speak with certainty. On that. Kim, no, I don't think. Although I'm not sure. Meyer, I don't think so. Morris, I don't think so. Patterson, I think so. But I've certainly read Charlotte Patterson's work on this subject over the years. She's written many articles, and I believe I've read this one, but I'm not 100% confident that I have. Peplow, I don't think so. And Williams, I don't think so. Williams, I'm confident I have not read.
So you did read the Waite and Gallagher article?
It's a book.
And you think you've read the Patterson article?
Well,
And you're pretty sure you read the Geikolt, Glazer article?
yes, yes.
And you read the two articles by, what is it?
Amato, Paul Amato.
Amato. The two articles by Amato, and the article or book, I guess it is, by Bloomstein and Schwartz. Is that correct?
Well, that's my best, that's the best answer I could give you right now.
Okay. Let me just while I'm here, the American Psychological Association. Now, they also adopted a resolution in favor of gay marriage, correct?
Yes, sir.
And let me ask you to look at tab 4 in this binder. And this is Exhibit 765. And have you seen this document before?
I believe this is in evidence, is it not?
It is, Your Honor, it is, yes.
Well, Mr. Boies, I'm fairly confident that I read it when it came out, but I can't absolutely give you, it's my best. I certainly know of the endorsement, and I have certainly read of the endorsement, and I know I've read excerpts, and I believe I read the document in its entirety when it came out, but I cannot say that with absolute certainty.
All right, now on the 3rd and 4th and 5th page of the document, the last 3 pages of the document, there are a series of references. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
Now, this is a very, very long list, and
Yes,
by
sir.
glancing at it, can you just tell me whether you've read most of these or not read most of these?
By most, do you mean more than 50%?
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out whether it's faster to ask you those you have read or those you haven't read, which is the fastest way to go through this.
And just hold on, just give me one moment. I think that I have not read at least 51% of these documents.
Okay, then why don't you just give me the ones you have read?
The Anthropological Association statement. Again, I think that's a different Bloomstein and Schwartz. See, I don't know if I've read that or not. And most of these I have not read. Some of them are duplicative of the other. The previous list that we were going through.
Is the question
Eskridge.
whether he has read or not read?
Read.
Read.
Yeah, which are the ones that he has read.
Oh, I see. Okay. American Anthropological Association, Eskridge, and Goodridge. I think Johnson. I think those few are it on
Okay.
this list.
Okay, so that would, and you said Eskridge. Did you read?
Eskridge.
Eskridge. Did you read both of the Eskridge's articles that are here?
No, sir. Just the equality practice. That was his book.
Oh, so it would be,
I'm sorry. What? It was a law review article.
yeah, so you would have read, let's see, you would have read,
I've also read his books, but that's different. That's a different. What's listed here is equality practice as a law review article.
so you would have read 4 or 5, perhaps, of the 40 or 41 references that are listed here, correct?
Well, I think that's fair. Yes, sir.
All right. Well, let me ask you to turn to tab 10 in the first binder that I gave you this morning. No, not the recent little binder, but the first binder I gave you this morning. Plaintiff's Exhibit 2899. May I approach, Your Honor?
Sure.
See, I'm just having a hard time finding out the binder that I'm supposed to look in. It's one of these, huh?
It's the binder there.
Yeah. Okay. So this goes up to 15.
Tab 10 in that binder.
10. 10 it is. 10.
This is Plaintiff's Exhibit 2899. It is entitled, Will Providing Marriage Rights to Same-Sex Couples Undermine Heterosexual Marriage? You see that, sir?
I do. Yes,
And
sir.
is this the document that you have reviewed?
Well, it's not listed on my documents included, but Badgett is someone whose articles I have read. I don't know whether I've specifically reviewed this article.
Your Honor, I would offer Plaintiff's Exhibit 2899.
No objection to the court taking judicial notice of it.
Very well.
She's a prominent proponent of same-sex marriage, Miss Badgett. So I've read. I know I've read a number of her things.
She is a well-regarded scholar, is she not?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. No, I don't know her. I'm perfectly happy to take your word for that. I am sure she is.
But you don't know one way or the other.
Well, I'm just saying that I've read several of her articles in an attempt to acquaint myself with her body of work, and I appreciate the integrity of those articles. I don't know quite what else to say. She's obviously taken a very, a position quite opposite to my own on most every possible question, but I respect her
You have your answer.
as a thinker, yes.
All right, let me ask you to look at tab 11 in the same binder. Now, this is Defendant's Exhibit 2, and I don't know whether this is in evidence or not.
I think it's on my list, Mr. Boies, the Amato article.
Yes.
Yeah.
To whatever extent it is not, we have no objection, Your Honor.
Is that a request to move it in?
It is, Your Honor.
All right.
No. And this is an article in which Amato investigates how children in households with both biological parents differ from children in households with only one biological parent, correct?
Well, I see that you have read that from a summary that was written by someone else.
Well, let me ask this.
My understanding is that he's writing an article on the impact of family formation change on the cognitive, social, and emotional well-being of the next generation.
That's the title of the thing.
Yes, sir.
But in terms, you've read the whole thing, of course.
Yes, sir.
And do you have a current recollection of it enough to answer a question about what the overall methodology is of this article?
I believe he looked at some data from the Ad Health survey, and I believe he was trying to investigate whether or not children who grow up in, I believe several times in his article he refers to it as, continuously married biological parents. Mm-hmm. And I believe he is trying to compare, using this body of data in this particular article and other books and articles, he's looked at different bodies of data, but in this particular article, it's Ad Health, and he's trying to estimate outcome differences comparing children who are growing up in continuously married to biological parent homes with children from other family structures, and he's making certain conclusions about those inquiries, and then he's making a policy recommendation at the end that it would be much to the advantage.
I'm not asking you to summarize it or give a book report on this. What I want is just two quick questions that I ought to get answers to. Okay. Now the first is it your understanding that what he compares are the outcome differences between children in households with both biological parents as compared to children in households with only one biological parent? Is that your understanding or not, sir?
Well, not really.
Oh, okay. Well, then let me ask you to look at the second paragraph of the document, okay?
Okay.
It says, Amato begins by investigating how children in households with both biological parents differ from children in households with only one biological parent. You see that?
Yeah. Oh no. Can you tell me where you're reading from?
It's the very second paragraph of the document.
Mm-hmm.
Amato begins by investigating how children in households with both biological parents differ from children in households with only one biological parent. You see that?
Yeah, I was reading from the
Well, do you see that?
Yes, sir, I see it. I see
Okay,
it.
now, is it your understanding that when Amato uses the term biological parent in this article, he is including adoptive parents to be the same as biological parents, is he not?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now with respect to the issue of biology, now you believe that it is more important that children grow up with two parents than they grow up with a single biological parent, correct?
That's not familiar to me as a statement that I have made.
Well, for example, have you stated that it is important to encourage unmarried women who have children to give up their babies for adoption by married couples?
In several publications with certain qualifications in place, I have specifically, with reference in my mind to unmarried teenage girls, I have made such a recommendation. To the best of my memory, I have made such a recommendation, or it may have been part of a study. Yeah, I may have been part of a study that made such a recommendation.
No. May I just have a moment, Your Honor?
Very well.
All right, Your Honor, we've agreed on a list of documents to be admitted, and I would hand that up if I can.
Very well.
There's one document not on this list. It's a declaration by Mr. Prentice, but it will be added to the list. It was part of an arrangement.
Fair enough. Do you have an exhibit number on the document to be added?
Why don't we make the next, we'll put a,
Number it later.
okay, thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Blankenhorn, let me just ask you, and hopefully just two more quick areas, all right? First, would you turn to tab 3 of this binder, the binder that has 15 tabs to it?
Yes.
And this is the review article. Are you there?
No. Yeah.
All right.
I have it. Yes, sir.
Okay. This is the review article that you referred to previously and published in Developmental and Behavioral Pediatrics. Is that correct?
I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I must be.
No, tab 3.
Sorry.
3.
Lesbian mothers, gay fathers, and their children.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
All right. Are you familiar with this document?
I don't believe so, sir.
Okay. Well, there's something that's headed abstract.
Abstract.
And you know what an abstract is, do you not, sir?
Of course.
And the abstract says, there is a variety of families headed by a lesbian or gay male parent or same-sex couple. Finding from research suggests that children with lesbian or gay parents are comparable with children with heterosexual parents on key psychological, psychosocial, developmental outcomes. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
All right? And even though you may not be aware of this article, sir, are you aware of other articles in peer-reviewed journals that reach this conclusion?
Yes, sir, I am aware.
All right. Now, we've talked a lot about the institution of marriage. Now, would you agree that the institution of marriage is, it's constantly evolving, correct?
Yes, sir.
And it's always changing, correct?
I wrote these words in my book.
And no single universally accepted definition of marriage exists, correct?
I wrote those words too.
Your Honor, I have no more questions.
Redirect, Mr. Cooper.
Thank you, Your Honor. I can be quite brief, I think. Mr. Blankenhorn, is your book in front of you the entire book, Future of Marriage?
Oh, do you mean, no, sir, no, sir, no.
Could I hand the full book, because there's a page I wanted to refer to that isn't in any of these excerpts that are before him?
Sure.
Thank you.
This is Exhibit 9, DIX 956, and I believe that it's already been admitted.
May I hand the book to the witness, Your Honor?
Yes, indeed. I say 956 is in?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right.
Mr. Blankenhorn, do you recall yesterday when Mr. Boies read a passage from page 2 of your book, The Future of Marriage, in which you say, among other things, that I believe that today the principle equal human dignity must apply to gay and lesbian persons. Do you recall that?
Yes, sir.
Would you look on page 3 of your book, the last 2 paragraphs? I'd like to read those paragraphs into the record. Many thinkers, perhaps most notably Isaiah Berlin, the great 20th century philosopher of liberalism, have pointed out that many important choices we face do not involve choosing between good and bad, but between good and good. It is good to deter crime by punishing criminals. It is also good to forgive. But doing more punishing means doing less forgiving, because the two goods are to some extent mutually exclusive. Berlin's concept of goods in conflict is central to my understanding of society's need to make choices regarding the definition of marriage. One good is the equal dignity of all persons. Another good is a mother and a father at a child's birthright. These goods are at least partially in conflict. Resolving that conflict, making a morally responsible choice about the future of marriage that is faithful to the essential purposes of the institution, while at least recognizing both of these goods, is a major aim of this book. Earlier, I think, in your colloquy with Mr. Boies, you mentioned a conflict of goods.
Mm-hmm.
Is this, does this essentially capture your thought on that, or summarize it?
Yes, sir.
Turn to page 20 of the witness, of the documents behind tab 13 of your witness binder from this morning. And that is another excerpt. That is the excerpt of your book.
This is from Fatherless Marriage. Yeah?
No, this is from The Future of Marriage.
Oh. Oh, yes, I have it. I'm sorry.
Do you recall this morning's colloquy with Mr. Boies in which you made clear that to the degree you must choose between the rights and interests of gays with respect to same-sex marriage on the one hand, and the interests that you have articulated previously that are served by customary marriage, you would, with anguish, choose those interests served by customary marriage. Do you recall that?
Yes, sir.
All right. I want you to refer now to page 20, the last full paragraph of the page in your book, The Future of Marriage. And again, I'd like to read that as well. In the case of same-sex marriage, one priority is the particular rights and needs of same-sex couples, the right to equal respect, the right to form loving, stable partnerships and families, and the need for greater social acceptance. Another priority is the collective rights and needs of children. The right to know and be loved by a mother and a father, and the need for as many children as possible to grow up under a strong shelter of marriage, our society's most pro-child institution.
Yeah.
To the degree that these two priorities can be in harmony or at least exist together in peace, I want to embrace them both. Is that your view?
Yes, sir.
Do you believe that they can be embraced in harmony?
Yes, sir.
Do you believe that, for example, many of the items that you identified this morning on the list of good public policy outcomes that would flow from same-sex marriage can be achieved through, for example, domestic partnerships?
I do. Well, that's my understanding of the, well, that's been my own conclusion in trying to wrestle with this concept of goods in conflict, and that's, this is the conclusion that I've come to as I've tried to reconcile to reconcile this conflict as best I can.
And did you speak to that yesterday in connection with describing the process you had gone through, which culminated, I think, in the publication of an article in the New York Times earlier last year?
Yes, sir. Endorsing the protection of marriage for its distinctive purpose, but also establishing very strong domestic partnership structures.
Your Honor, I have no further questions. I would like to submit into the record for judicial review a copy of the New York Times article. I don't have it in my hands right now, but I will get copies into my hands and into the courts and into councils.
No objection, Your Honor.
Very well, that will be marked as DIX next in order.
Here they are now.
You have able assistance.
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. And so I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Very well, then thank you, Mr. Blankenhorn. You may step down. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Any additional witnesses, Mr. Cooper?
I beg your pardon, any what?
Call your next witness.
Oh, Your Honor, we have no further witnesses.
Very well. Now, I understood that you had some documents you wanted to add. Have you taken care of that this morning?
I think we have resolved it, and my colleague, Mr. Thompson, has been the lead for us on that, and he can speak to that.
Your Honor, this will take just a very brief moment, but there are a couple of items. We have a proffer of documents, and the plaintiffs have not objected to this list of documents. These are the official campaign speech and materials of ProtectMarriage.com. We have a list of those documents. In addition, there is one other document, DIX 2717, which the plaintiffs have not objected to. So with the court's permission, we would like to submit that list.
That's DIX.
2717.
Very well.
Thank you.
In addition, Your Honor, a moment ago there was a reference to the fact that we had an additional document for which we didn't have a number. We now have that document. We have a number. It's under seal, but may I pass that to the clerk?
You may.
And it's DIX 2719.
Fine, and that is being admitted without objection, I gather?
That's correct, Your Honor.
Okay.
In addition, Your Honor, just in the nature of housekeeping, we have the counter designations of Professor Young and Nathanson, the pink and the yellow.
Yes.
We understand the court will resolve that at the court's convenience, but we just wanted to note that we would still like the pink and the yellow in the record. And in addition, we've made some counter designations of Dr. Tam's deposition. We understand that there may be objections to that, but we'd still like to submit those, subject to whatever objections the plaintiffs have.
Your Honor, we just received those this morning, so we would like, if possible, the opportunity to review them and make submissions by the end of the week with our position or counter designation.
That would be fine.
Thank you.
And the same goes for Dr. Robinson. We have no objection to their taking until the end of the week on that for their
Doctor.
Robinson. There are some counters for him.
All right.
Thank you.
Now, I too have some housekeeping that I want to do, but
I
perhaps
have one more item, Your Honor.
all right.
And then finally, Your Honor, we did note, as the court is aware, that our motions to compel are outstanding, and we're not in a position to formally rest our case until those are resolved. If we were to receive documents from the No on 8 campaign, we might want to leave to submit those documents and/or call witnesses pertaining to those subject matters. But other than that, we have no further witnesses, and we have no further documents.
Very well. We have either this morning or last evening issued an order calling for a response from the third parties that you have subpoenaed, the three organizations, and have also given the plaintiffs an opportunity to chime in if they wish to do so. They may or they may not wish to do so. But we're setting a briefing schedule on that, so you should receive those by Friday.
Thank you, Your Honor.
So I think that will be taken care of. Any housekeeping from the plaintiffs? Mr. Boutrous.
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. And they are truly housekeeping. The first issue, the plaintiff's exhibit 2332A, which was a list of the materials considered by Mr. Blankenhorn, was not moved into evidence. We would like to move them into evidence so it's in the record before the court.
2332A.
That's correct.
Hearing no objection.
No objection, Your Honor.
Very well.
Thank you, Your Honor. Another exhibit issue, during Mr. Boies' examination of Mr. Blankenhorn, he referred to Plaintiff's Exhibit 744, which was the book, The Future of Marriage, by Mr. Blankenhorn.
Yes.
Defendant's Exhibit 956 is the book. It's in evidence. We could either move ours into, or I could clarify for the record that when Mr. Boies was referring to Plaintiff's Exhibit 744, he was referring to a book which is Defendant's Exhibit 956,
Very well.
which is in evidence.
We will simply note that those two books are the same book by different exhibit numbers.
Thank you, Your Honor. And as the court will recall, we had moved into evidence a couple of, two documents from the Library of Congress, and we did not have the official copies. We represented to the court that they were in the Library of Congress. We now have official copies, so I would simply like to substitute in the official copies. Plaintiff's Exhibit 2581, which was the IRS letter from 1974, and then Plaintiff's Exhibit 2566, which was the letter to the Mattacine Society, as I will provide copies to the court and to opposing counsel.
Very well.
Thank you. And then finally, we have a number of documents that we just received from the, where we disputed issues in the privilege log. And we would like to reserve the right to review those and supplement and record and supplement the record where appropriate and as appropriate once we have had a chance to review them.
Very well, that'll be fine.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think that's it from my list.
I was going to ask the plaintiffs, and now that the defendants have essentially rested, whether you intend to call any rebuttal witnesses.
We do not, Your Honor.
Mr. Thompson.
Your Honor, I do apologize. I forgot one last housekeeping. Fatherless America has been admitted twice under the wrong number. We labeled it DIX 103. It's actually 108. So we just wanted the record to be clear that Fatherless America is 108, and the record should be corrected to reflect that.
All right. Anything further from any party? How about the Attorney General?
No, Your Honor, we have none.
Any of the other defendants? All right. We have some loose ends for the court to take care of, one of which has been mentioned, and that is the motion to compel compliance with the no-on-8 subpoenas that the defendants are seeking, and that should be taken care of shortly. We have, as yet, unresolved the motion to withdraw by Dr. Tam. I think that's fully briefed, and so it would simply remains to be ruled upon by the court. Similarly, I believe the motion to intervene by Imperial County has been fully briefed, and that remains to be ruled on by the court. We have 137 documents that the plaintiffs lodged with the court that have not been submitted on the record. Do you recall those, Mr. Boutros? I believe those came from the production.
Your Honor, I believe that they were documents that were under seal, but let me, well, if I could just investigate and report back now.
Well, we have the documents.
May I investigate these?
Things do run downhill, don't they?
Yes, Your Honor. We have dealt with these issues through the exhibits we have put into evidence, so they can now remain with us unless the court would like them back.
I think we have enough, Mr. Boutros. All right, that's helpful. Amicus briefs. Do the parties have a position on amicus briefs? My inclination is to have some inclination with reference to that, but I would be happy to hear any suggestions that the parties wish to offer.
Well, Your Honor, our position would be, to the extent the court feels it would be useful, relatively brief amicus briefs filed. I think the court had indicated 7 days after the close of evidence at one of our earlier hearings. We would welcome that as long as the court felt it was useful to the court.
Mr. Cooper.
Your Honor, we don't have any kind of, strident opposition to that, but it's difficult for me to imagine that the court needs additional material to chew on as you consider the issues before you. But I do think that it would be important to have some meaningful opportunity after any amicus briefs were filed for the parties then to put in their own papers, obviously, to the court.
Obviously, I quite agree. If it's agreeable to the parties, let me say that the court will set a deadline of 7 days from today. That'll be next Wednesday, which I believe is February 3rd, for application to file amicus briefs. And the court will consider any such applications and either grant or deny those that may be appropriate. And I will set a 15-page limit on any amicus participation and provide a period of time for the parties to file whatever response, if any, that they may wish to make. And I agree with Mr. Cooper. It's an abundant record, and I doubt some amicus briefs can add very much, but one never knows. So I think that we should at least leave the door open to amicus participation. And I believe that that's it from my end. I assume there's nothing further from any of the parties. One other matter, Mr. Boutros?
Well, in terms of post-trial filings?
Yes. Here's what I'd like. I'd like to take some time to go over all of this material. I don't think at this juncture it would be helpful to have post-trial briefs. You may very well, however, wish to submit references to the evidence that has been submitted with your proposed findings of fact and conclusions of law, those you've already submitted. And I'm sure you presented evidence in this case with the proposed findings in mind and the conclusions, so it would be helpful if you could furnish those to the court. Now, I realize that you have a lot of material to go through, so I'll be guided by your suggestion about how much time you'll need in order to do that. But what I would like to do, after receiving those, and after concluding today's proceedings, is to consider that material and then set a date for closing argument. And what I will probably do in connection with setting that date is to perhaps key up some questions that have come to fore as a result of the review of the evidence and give you an opportunity to address that in your closing argument and in any post-trial briefings you may wish to make on the law. But I would rather leave that date open at the present time. When the time comes, I'll have the clerk call both sides and give you a range of dates so that you can work it out consistent with, I'm sure, your many other obligations. But I would, at this point, think only request references to the evidence that you've submitted in connection with your proposed findings and conclusions. So how long do you think how long a deadline would be reasonable for that submission?
30 days would be fine with us, Your Honor, and I think that that would, well, it sounds like an excellent approach.
Mr. Cooper?
It seems to me that 30 days should be adequate, Your Honor, yes.
Very well, then that'll be fine. And why don't we set February 26th? That's just about 30 days. All right, February 26th? And probably by that time, we'll have a much better idea of what kind of schedule should be set for closing argument. All right. Anything further?
Your Honor, on behalf of the plaintiffs, we just wanted to thank the court staff for making it so easy for us to try the case. And we very much appreciate everything everyone did during the trial. Thank you, Your Honor.
Well, I would like to extend my congratulations to the lawyers in the case for obviously a fascinating case, extremely well presented on both sides. Obviously, there's some old hands in the courtroom in this proceeding, and I have been particularly struck by the very fine work of many of the younger lawyers in this case, both here in the courtroom and I am sure behind the scenes. It's really, well, the old hands should take great pride and pleasure in the younger generation that you've worked with. They've done a splendid job, and you have much to be pleased with. So I'd like to take a moment to personally congratulate you and tell you what a good job you've all done.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor.